Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Tuesday, May 27th, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet, and it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 20 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again absolutely free. You can also download from that page a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one, where people have been stepped through the worksheet process. And if you choose to listen to them even repeatedly, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you to help you get maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. You can also go to your App Store and type in the three words HeartLand Aramaic Forgiveness. And if you choose to do that before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you tap on that, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Dragon and Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. And we hope people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives. And secondarily, because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. If you have any of those to share with us, you can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org. Or you can email Jeanie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. And if we get a question or a comment from you, we'll address it on the internet show, and then as time allows, send you a notification about what day and time that occurred, so you can listen back to the archives for your feedback or input. Alternatively, if you have the option to join us when we're live through Zoom, these days Zoom has a whole host of numbers you can call. And once you call a Zoom number, you can enter the meeting ID, which for our hour is 853-2357-4173. 853-2357-4173. And the second hour is a different number. We'll offer that later. And this week, through the week, Michael and Jeanie are doing an intensive in person, and so Jeanie has arranged for Podbean to broadcast some special shows that give people access to some of the programs that used to only be available if you bought the DVD. So that's on Podbean for the second hour throughout this week. So we have plenty of time to have comments or questions. Today, the interview I did with Micah Salabarius was published on the On Your Mind podcast. You can find that at onyourmindpodcast.org or journeysdream.org/podcast. And that's about him talking about the book that he wrote, which only takes about an hour to listen to on Audible, which is one of the most effective and concise summaries of the nonviolent communication process that Marshall Rosenberg created decades ago. And I enjoyed the conversation. I hope you will as well. There are 195 or so interviews available for free perusal and listening on onyourmindpodcast.org. And for those that like to see a little video, most of them also have a video. So if you go to the YouTube channel for Journey's Dream and search for the interviews that way, you can actually see the person I'm interviewing. Most of them. There are a few that chose not to be recorded, but or have their video recorded. So, what's on your mind? How can we support you? Please keep in mind that even if I'm in the middle of reading something or seeming to be in a monologue, I encourage people to unmute and speak up or send an email. And I think I mentioned yesterday that I have an interview coming up in 2 days of Chris Driscoll, who's going to talk about the book Positive Intelligence. And I believe I talked yesterday about how I thoroughly enjoyed that book and sent a copy to both of my sons. And it's very much of what we talk about. It incorporates things from internal family systems and the work we do here on Mind Shifters Radio and good solid communication skills. And he just incorporates a lot of really useful stuff. And he claims to have research that backs the effectiveness of the approach he's recommending, which is very similar to all the other work that I've been doing with people for decades now. So I'm looking forward to that interview. The book again is titled Positive Intelligence by Shirzad Chamine. And if nobody has a comment or a question, I'm going to return to the essay I began to read yesterday. And this is under the theme about meditation. There's a collection of essays grouped into themes, and this theme is meditation. And the title of this essay is Spirituality, the Search for What is Real. And this is my preference. When I talk about spirituality, I'm talking about these fundamental deep truth observations that each and every one of us needs to make for ourselves in order to be able to live our lives full on in the moment. And Christian writes, true spirituality is dwelling in what is real. True spirituality is not primarily adherence to ideas in the mind. And this is an important distinction because as beings living in duality, we commonly feel that truth is to be found within certain ideas and not within other ideas. Yet all ideas and all form exist within the one thing that is, or all that is. We call it life, we call it love, we call it light, we call it God, we call it all that is, we call it source. But the fact of the matter is that which is transcends all the ideas and forms. And at the most fundamental level, the source of all that is the most real thing there is. Spiritual truth, then, ultimately does not need to be taken on faith. So spiritual truth does not need to be taken on faith. What we want to be focusing on and talking about are those things that are actually real, that are full on observable to each individual in the moment. And Christian writes, in fact, it's far more real, the source of all that is far more real than that which we commonly experience day to day. And because it is real, we've absolutely nothing to fear in honestly searching for what is real and in exploring whatever we feel is real. Many people find it terrifying, however, to explore what they feel is real because they believe that the world is a terrible place or that life is terrible. Indeed, they have so much evidence to convince them of this fact, and fact is in quotes. In fact, Christian writes, this reality will always give us evidence to support what we believe. This is why we talk about the need to understand how active our perception is, the need to understand that each and every one of us is literally creating our experience of life in the moment by how we're choosing to interpret and respond to the stimuli that hit our senses. And Dr. Michael Ryce talks about how your mind is an evidentiary device. And when you tell your mind, show me how this person is wrong and I'm right, show me how I've hurt this person's feelings by this horrible thing I said or did or didn't do. Once I make that request of my mind, it will start to arrange the data points that it can conjure up in a way that proves to me that what I told my mind to show me is the actual truth. But the fact is, this occurs because what is fundamentally true is not our beliefs themselves or what we experience, because we actively color and create our perceptions, our biases, our deeply held unconscious beliefs, our preferences. Great spiritual teachings know this. The Course in Miracles says we must come to understand the distorting power of the way we want things to be. And Guy Finley says, a person can't lie to you unless you want something from them. When you no longer want anything from a person, they can't lie to you. Why? Because if you want them to be a certain way, or you want them to accept you and approve of you, your mind will distort your perception based on that set of goals. Christian writes, nothing is ever believed, conceived, or experienced without our own awareness of it. And thus, in order to actually discover what is real, we must be willing to truly and deeply explore the most challenging thing there is to explore, and that is ourselves. Spiritual growth can occur when one commits to the honest pursuit of what is truly real within oneself. In doing so, however, this takes considerable personal courage because it means one must be willing to feel what one actually feels and face what one actually is. It is far, far easier to place the blame on certain ideas or to cling to long-held beliefs to create a sense of safety than it is to drop the charade of the ego and allow oneself to actually experience everything, including the experience of uncertainty about what is real. But the whole charade of the ego is ultimately an illusion. It is not real, except that we relate to it as though it's real. So we've made it real for us in our illusory state. Truth, on the other hand, will stand up to scrutiny because it just is the truth of what it is. However, since the truth, with a capital T, transcends the human mind alone cannot fully discern the truth. Because consciousness transcends the objects of the mind that it beholds, the window to true discernment is a deep familiarity with that which is more real than one's own mind. What could be more real than your mind? Your awareness, your ability of being aware that you have thoughts and that your thoughts are separate from you because they change moment to moment, and yet your essence does not. Christian writes, this is why meditation is such a valuable tool. It is simply exploring, quote, what actually is, close quotes. It's exploring that by dwelling fully in the present moment, instead of being lost in the many thoughts of the illusory mind. So, under this category or heading of meditation, that essay was titled Spirituality, the Search for What is Real. The next essay in this theme is titled Happiness is Always Within You. And Christian writes, you do not need any single thing to be happy. Happiness is available in every moment at the root of experience. And yet we experience unhappiness. We experience unhappiness because we buy into thoughts and beliefs about the current situation or stimulus that are counter to our true nature. It is never the situation or stimulus itself that causes us to be unhappy. This is key. This is what we teach. It is our interpretation of the situation or stimulus that causes us to be unhappy. This is that dynamic that I try and bring to people's attention to when they say, well, this situation triggered me, or he triggered me, or she triggered me, or I got triggered. My observations over the past at least 10 years are that I'm never triggered by a situation. If I decide to interpret a particular situation or the set of impressions that are hitting my senses, if I decide to interpret a particular way that has resonant energy with an upset that's already in me, I'll feel that upset. I'll add the energy to it, and it will become far more obvious at a conscious level. And yet, that very same situation can happen, and I can catch myself pouring my mind energy into a negative interpretation and flip it, and all of a sudden shift how I feel. One of the examples of this is in Dr. Michael Ryce's book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And I thought I might pull the book up, but I'll have to do that another time. But he's talking to Richard. He's having this conversation with a gentleman named Richard, and Richard's talking about Richard's upset because his sister always got what she wanted, and Richard didn't always get what he wanted. And so in the conversation, Dr. Ryce coaches Richard to decide whether or not he cared about or loved his sister. And Richard says, oh, yes, he cares very much about his sister. He loves her very much. And yet, when Richard would think about the situation where his sister got the shiny new bike she wanted for Christmas or whatever it was, and Richard didn't get what he wanted, Richard would generate upset at his parents for playing favorites or whatever. And so Dr. Ryce coached him to think in terms of, why don't you just focus on, without the context of how you didn't get what you want, just focus on this situation. Here's your sister that you love, and she's had her heart set on this bike, and she gets the bike she wants, and she's so happy. How do you feel when you think about it that way? And instantly, Richard is feeling compassion and loving and joyful that his sister, who he loves, is happy. And because, whatever the situation is, she got what she wanted, and she's having this expression of contentment or joy or whatever. So instantly, as Richard shifts the focus away from how he didn't get what he wants and just focuses on, here's my sister who I love, and how nice it is that she's bubbling over with joy because she got this beautiful gift, he demonstrates to himself just what Christian's talking about in this essay. The outside event stays the same. Richard didn't get the bike he wanted or the thing he wanted, and his sister did get the bike she wanted, exactly what she wanted. And in one moment, Richard's interpreting this as evidence that his parents don't love him as much as they love his sister. And in the next moment, he switches his focus and he just focuses on how wonderful it is that his sister, who he loves, is so happy. He chooses an interpretation for the same data points that either resonates upset in him and resentment and bitterness and hurt, or it resonates joy and contentment and peace. So Christian goes on here and says, the source of happiness is within you. You do not need to go anywhere to find it. You do not need to do anything or attain anything to be what you are. What you are is conscious awareness. And awareness, when it hasn't been obscured by getting lost in the illusion of form, awareness itself is profoundly blissful. When you allow yourself to let go and just be what you truly are, joy is always the natural experience. Joy is the native and natural state. Now imagine that. Imagine if every time you got upset at any level, you recognize that whatever your mind is telling you in that moment must be false, because your true nature is awareness, and awareness itself is always profoundly blissful. Unless that light of bliss, that light of insight and compassion is covered over with what in the scriptures they would call bushel baskets, or negative thoughts, or the energies of trauma that have gotten resonated into activity. So they distract me from my awareness of my true nature and that blissful state that is connected to it. So Christian writes, in order to refamiliarize yourself with what you really are, while you're still inside this dream of the physical life, you can allow yourself to completely let go, at least for a while. Let go of all the things you are not. What are you not? You are not your thoughts. You are not your judgments. You are not your expectations. You are not your beliefs. You are not your goals. You are not your responsibilities. You are not your abilities or your disabilities. And you are not your pain. You are the awareness that beholds all of these things. You are the you that feels most like you to you. You are the awareness that is wearing those thoughts, judgments, expectations, and beliefs for just a little while. As awareness, You always have permission to let go of your thoughts about the present moment and to just fully experience the present moment for exactly what it is, without any resistance, without any rejection, without any thought, without any judgment. If you do so deeply enough, you will find that beneath all the pain, there is always joy. If you let go of, if you put away your trifling treasures, you let go of everything you think you want, and you leave a clean and open space, you can get access to your true nature. And your true nature is awareness with the experience of bliss. When it's not colored over, when it's not distorted, your true nature is aware of a blissful existence. The next essay in this grouping is titled Letting Go of the Desire to Think in Meditation. And Christian writes, meditation is not ultimately about piling one thought, like the thought that I don't think or be blank or go deep, or it's not about piling those thoughts on top of each other and a stream of other thoughts. Meditation is about removing the momentum behind the thoughts so that their arrival will diminish, so that awareness itself can rise without falling back to sleep into thought. Thought is not the same as intent. Thought is a form beheld in the mind. Intent is the fundamental movement of consciousness. In order to slow down the momentum of thought, intent must first move to change the desire to behold the thought. Our desire to listen to our thoughts feeds their momentum. If we want to experience our truer nature, we have to decide to simply let go of focusing on thoughts. Most of us who experience constant thought do so because we care about those thoughts. We truly believe their content is important, or perhaps we find comfort or pleasure in them. The thoughts arrive to serve us. Perhaps we've been propelling the same thoughts so consistently and for so long that they've become almost all we know. The following is not to be misconstrued. However, in order to fully meditate and experience our greater awareness, we have to allow ourselves to, quote, not care, close quotes, about the content of our thoughts. We have to allow ourselves to let go of the need for the thoughts to serve whatever purpose they are serving. We see the thoughts arrive and we pay them no heed. If you sit down to meditate and you actually want to be doing something else, your intent and your meditation experience will reflect that. Meditation then should be done at a time when you're ready to let go. When you invest yourself in letting go, when you give yourself permission to deeply release all expectations and needs and desires, then your momentum of thought will reflect that, and your greater awareness will just naturally rise to the surface. Indeed, incredible relief is available to you when you finally put down the need that your thoughts are faithfully serving. Meditation is ultimately not an action. It is allowing awareness to be more fully in the present moment without being lost in the dreams of the mind. That allowing means letting go, even letting go of the need to listen to your thoughts, and letting go of the wants, needs, and desires that those thoughts are serving. So just like the process of forgiveness from the Course in Miracles, where it says, open a curtain in your practice, put down everything you think you want, your trifling treasures put away, and leave a clean and open space for the Christ mind to come, or for some other wisdom to fill your awareness. When you combine that with the observation from the Course in Miracles that says we must become aware of the distorting power of how we want things to be, then we understand that every time we want something, our mind will distort our perception gathered around or driven by that desire or that goal or that obsession that we're generating with our mind. So meditation is not so much doing something as it is being present in the moment and allowing my thoughts to flow without me judging them or trying to push them away or trying to control them, and simply opening myself to experience something other than this parade of thoughts, which I've become so accustomed to, which has so much momentum behind it. But as he talked about in the last essay, I weaken the momentum by giving up wanting my thoughts, wanting them to be there, wanting them to be right, wanting them to serve some purpose, and I just allow them to float by. I withdraw my identification from them or my passion for them. So the next essay in this grouping on meditation is titled Seeking Truth Beyond Knowledge. And this for the Western mind just is it's a koan right away, right there in the title. How can you have truth beyond knowledge? Knowledge is truth. Truth is power. Power is valuable, whatever. We've got all these connections in our mind to these words and the individual meanings that we've created for them. So the title of the essay is Seeking Truth Beyond Knowledge. Well, right there in the title, there's an assumption that there is a truth beyond what we can think about, beyond what we have words for. And Christian writes, many who seek truth in knowledge believe that there is, quote, some universe out there, close quotes, and that our job as truth seekers is to go and figure out that universe. Ironically, the one who is looking at the external forms that we call sense data and the internal forms that we call ideas and dualistic understandings, the ones who are looking at those things to find the answers is often missing a constantly available clue. Here's the clue. The forms one is evaluating only exist within one's own awareness of them. Those things you're evaluating, those forms, those ideas, those thoughts, those beliefs, those sensory data that seem to indicate I'm over here and you're over there and we're separate, those forms that I'm evaluating only exist the way that I'm experiencing them inside my own head. I just thought about there was a a thing on the internet a number of years ago about put in your vote here. Is this dress gold or is it black or is it blue? And people were fighting in words. They were fighting over this back and forth because quite actually the truth is different people's brains are showing them a different image when the light bounces off the TV or the phone or the computer screen and hits the individual eye. So some people actually saw this as one color, and without any trickery, without any technological shifting and changing, other people saw it as a different color. And there were a lot of people that argued about this and they thought people are just kidding. Of course, anybody could see that dress is gold, etc. Well, a number of years ago, we had a gathering where my sons were teaching some of us the game Magic the Gathering. And as they were teaching us the game, there are all of these different little colors and emblems on these cards. And my sons kept referring to this set of cards as having this red dot indicating something. Every time you see the red dot, it means this. And try as I might, I couldn't see a red dot on the card they were pointing at. The dot I saw was yellow. And eventually I stopped them to clarify because I'm trying to learn the game and I'm trying to make it make sense. So I wanted to make sure that we're all looking at the same thing. And they said, yeah, that dot right there, the red dot. And I said, but that dot is yellow in my eyes. They thought I was teasing. And we had to go through the whole process of pulling it up on the internet and talking about how is it possible that human beings who are not trying to kid each other or trick anybody are looking at the same stimulus and perceiving it radically differently. Everything you see, all of your thoughts, all of your beliefs, all of what you see in the world of form only exists the way you're perceiving it in your mind. And there can be subtle and very powerful and drastic differences between you standing right next to somebody else and the two of you observing a third person or a separate object. So the problem of thinking that you know something is that it's a trap because you only have your own experience to go by unless you start tapping into other sources of insight, intuition, experience, etc. So he writes, all forms are contained within awareness. It is not that awareness only exists within form. Like Eben Alexander, who used to believe that consciousness was simply the byproduct of random neural firings. He was a neuroscientist and he was trained and he believed that until his brain went offline and they couldn't find any signs of life in his brain, and he had an extensive, vivid life experience that for him was even more real than anything he'd had prior to that in his physical life. So awareness does not exist within form. Form arises within awareness. That distinction is exactly what the veil allows the spirit to experience on earth, and it clouds the individual's awareness of his or her deeper transcendent nature so that she or he can get lost in the world of form. The individual then, having, quote, forgotten, close quotes, or having lost sight of what he or she really is for a time, that person goes out and seeks the answers to existence within the form itself. since from that perspective, form seems to be reality. However, looking in the world of form for what we call the big picture and the big picture answers is like a video game character trying to look for the answer to everything within the video game itself. There's not a single thing within the video game environment that will explain the nature of the physical computer server, or the building that the server resides in, or the motivations behind the people that built the server, or built the server building. In fact, since the video game character can only understand reality using video game world assumptions and concepts, it's not even possible for the character to understand the nature of the larger reality, because he or she will be using a video game knowledge-based intellectual mind. You and I are similarly bound. None of the metaphors, none of the ideas or relationships of Earth can explain, quote, the answer, capital A answer, close quotes. If one wishes to find truth, he or she must go beyond knowledge. How do we go beyond knowledge, he asks. There are no words that can truly communicate this deep and personal process. It occurs beneath form and beneath action itself. For the action-oriented mind, we can say the following. One can seek truth beyond knowledge by consistently and genuinely moving one's focus towards that which does transcend the boundaries of realities. What is that? Awareness itself. Or if awareness itself as a phrase is too vague and an object of attention is needed, we can instead say awareness of the present moment itself. Can you become more aware of the fact that you are experiencing your awareness? And that is your true nature. Christian writes, in order to do so, one must be willing to consistently and genuinely direct one's attention away from thought and the form towards what one actually is. One must be ready to surrender, to completely let go of all the stories and understandings of the mind, and meet the present moment fully. Now, this can take considerable patience and persistence, as we tend to build a huge amount of, quote, thought and idea momentum, close quotes, over the course of a lifetime. In fact, one should be willing to let go even of the need to find the answer. This is that Rilke idea of learning to live in the question without demanding an answer. Christian writes, the benefits of such a practice may initially seem incomprehensible to the mind. Yet, despite the challenge and the fact that the benefits may initially be hidden, such a pursuit is incredibly worthwhile. For indeed, our greater nature never leaves us. And beneath all the illusion we've become so tied up within, the greater truth of our powerful, formless being always remains available to us. The answers that are there far exceed the answers of the local human mind. You can't think your way. This is why Dr. Michael Ryce talks about the number one pseudo solution of the non-being mind, or the mind in hostility or fear. The number one solution is, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to think my way through to some kind of a logical, word-based, previously learned concept-based understanding of this situation, which means it's going to have to be old and dead and not the full truth. The last essay in this grouping is titled "The Rich Realness of the Formless." And this is a big, big stretch for the Western mind because we're so thoroughly taught and conditioned to believe that only form is real. And so here he's got an essay titled "The Rich Realness of That Which is Formless." Christian writes, since we believe in and associate so strongly with form, when we learn that form is not fundamental, and we learn that awareness itself is primary, we may make the mistake of thinking that spirit is something abstract or ephemeral. We may make the mistake of thinking that, quote, no form, close quotes, or to somehow, quote, be beyond form, close quotes, that those things mean nothing or are not very real. In fact, formless aliveness is the completely tangibly rich wellspring of capital B being. And it is from that which all realities of any kind of form arise from. Some of those realities are clearly perceived as being far more real than the earthly experience. And even those realities are ultimately transcended by the rich realness of capital B beingness itself. While this may sound abstract now, your whole being is full of far, far more than you may be able to conceive of with any earthly ideas. And that fullness is rich and alive. When you attempt to let go of earthly ideas and associations, do not be discouraged by the initial apparent emptiness of the silence. Often, one must first be surrendered to silence before the extremely, tangibly real wellspring that dwells beneath and within it can arise on its own. That process is not done as a search for more form, like thoughts and ideas and feelings or objects, but it's done as a search for what is actually real in the alert, present moment. This is an investigation of the present moment for exactly what it is. It is a conscious exploration of the aliveness itself that is always present. That's always there, bearing silent witness to every experience. The aliveness is real. And rather than being nothing or some things, it is full of everything. So, so many people I just flashed on Michael Singer. And when Michael Singer was young, he was in his 20s, he had this concept of, he became aware of his own internal self-talk and dialogue and how basically neurotic it was, how worried it was about what other people were thinking of him or how he was coming off in this situation or that situation. And so that awareness of his internal dialogue led him to start to question, have other people understood this? And did other people know this? And do other people have this incessant chatter in their mind? And when he found out that, yeah, basically everybody has it, and that, yes, it's been acknowledged and studied for centuries, then he dove into his own practice of meditation to try to explore that, to try to become more familiar with his own awareness, his own consciousness. And so how earlier in this series of essays I was reading today, Christian said, pay attention to how when you first give up the attachment to all the thoughts and creating the meaning for thoughts and trying to use thoughts to figure things out, when you first practice letting go of all of that and you get a glimpse at what's on the other side, it seems empty. It seems silent. It seems void. And that's not its true nature. It's just there's such a shift when we quiet the mind, or the mind quiets itself, as Guy Finley says. Your mind isn't going to be quieted by you thinking about something. Your mind only quiets down. It only stops what it's doing when your mind wakes up and realizes it is the source of your pain, not the solution to it. So as you go into a practice that has you actively withdrawing your attention from identifying with certain thoughts and just allowing them to be there and allowing them to float away without getting into deep questioning about what is the nature of my thought, or why am I having this thought, or what does that thought mean, or what should I do with that thought? Don't do anything with it. Just watch it and watch it drift away and watch what other thoughts want to replace it. And when you go into that space and you practice it enough that you've kind of slowed the momentum of thought, you've slowed your identification with thought, you're likely to get a glimpse of something that looks like an abyss, an empty void. And your mind might generate some fear about that. Your mind might want you to backpedal and say, wait a minute, this isn't safe, and I don't want to go into nothingness. But what these teachings are telling us is that there's a depth and a richness available just on the other side of that quiet, of that silence, which holds everything. There's an awake awareness which at its roots has an experience of the bliss state. And that awaits those who are willing to release their attachment to their thoughts and their beliefs and their structure of reality and their understanding that they know this to be right and they know that to be wrong. People who are willing to give up judgment and dismantle judgment at every level and dismantle their perception, they can get access to this direct experience of their true nature, and at its heart, that is a blissful state. So that's all I'm going to read for today. I will open it up for comments and questions. I thank you all for being here. It's a Tuesday, so tonight there will be a support group. Absolutely free. All the information you would need to join us on Zoom is available on the mindshiftersacademy.org website. And we have plenty of time for comment or question. I'll remind people that the Journey Stream On Your Mind podcast published today, the interview I did with Micah Salabarius on his book, The Art of Nonviolent Communication. And there's somebody that just put something in the chat. Susan Bingham says that this Michael Salabarius podcast is really good. Thank you, Susan. And Sally says, great class. I hope to hear the replay. So grateful. Well, I hope you can find it on Apple Podcasts. I've still been having the issue with iHeartRadio and Spotify and Amazon. They are not carrying our podcasts anymore. They're not refreshing them past May 2nd. And I wrote another email over the weekend to our podcast guru to let him know that that's still happening and to see if we can't find a solution for it. So I will remind people that this week, through the whole week, Michael and Jeanie are doing an intensive. And so the second hour is going to be broadcast on Podbean. Jeanie said it's also going to be on Zoom, but I have been unable to check in on Friday or yesterday. It says there is a show going, but the host doesn't let me in. So I will just remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false.